Greetings, citizen. I am Robocop. 50% hobo, 50% robot, 50% cop. And I am here to open my bindle full of holiday treasure so that you can learn about my stepbrother, Robocop, and his amazing Christmas. I'd buy that for $1.
I'd buy that for $1.
Because that is all I can afford. Hello, welcome to Comic Tropes. I'm your host, Chris. Folks, on this channel, for a while, I had a Christmas tradition where I would look at a Christmas-themed episode of some ridiculous cartoon or comic book adaptation. But I haven't done one in about 3 years. I think the last one I did was about the Ninja Turtles, their musical.
Take the holes with pepperoni.
My friend Harry Partridge reached out and he said that he loved those episodes, and if I did one, he would be willing to illustrate a thumbnail. Well, I love Harry Partridge's art, so I'm a cheap date, and I said, heck yes. And I had to dig a little, because there's a bunch of good Christmas episodes of cartoons, to be honest. But I think I found something. While it isn't technically based on a comic book, this character did have some comic books. So that's just close enough, I think. We're going to talk about Robocop. Now, the 1987 Robocop movie, I will argue with anyone that that is a basically perfect sci-fi action movie. Had a lot of satire, too. And yet, it was a hard R rating. And as soon as it came out, the studios started trying to aim it towards little kids. For instance, within a year of the Robocop movie being released, it had both a comic book and an animated series, both created by Marvel Comics and aimed squarely at kids. Here's a great example of the studios aiming Robocop at kids.
He's unstoppable.
The movie, which was R-rated, came out in July of 1987. And that same year, on Thanksgiving Day at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, Robocop showed up on the Marvel Comics superheroes float. To be fair, he didn't have much of a role. Captain America threw Dr. Doom into some electric wiring, and while he was getting electrocuted, Robocop showed up to turn the power off and save Dr. Doom. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but then again, neither did using Robocop as an actual wrestler to team up with Sting in a tag team match. A lot about Robocop does not make sense once you leave that first movie. The third film in the movie franchise was rated PG-13, also written by comic book writer and artist Frank Miller, just like the sequel. And that movie was essentially released direct to landfills. It was terrible. There were live-action TV versions made in both 1994 and also in 2001 that were aimed at mainstream audiences and drastically reduced the violence. But what we're going to talk about today is a 1998 cartoon called Robocop Alpha Commando. The original movie took place in a near future, undefined, but the near future. But Robocop Alpha Commando takes place in the far, far, far future, the year 2030. Nearly incomprehensible to imagine a year that far away. Anyway, it also features a Robocop who had been decommissioned and has just been reactivated after 5 years. Maybe they did that so that they didn't have to address the fact that Robocop had a family and a police partner, Ann Lewis, because those characters, nowhere to be found in Alpha Commando. Not mentioned at all. I also want to mention, before we get into this, 1987's Robocop, that movie, the ultimate enemy was an evil corporation. It was behind all of Detroit's problems. They also were the creators of Robocop himself, in that they were trying to take control of the police. The ultimate enemy of Robocop is unchecked capitalism. So, an episode about Christmas and people shopping like crazy, that could have some real meat on the bone for the show to digest. Yeah, it doesn't do that. The show begins with the most generic song you could possibly imagine, with someone just chanting, Robocop, Robocop. Once the show starts, we see a lot of blimps floating through the city playing obnoxious ads. That's as close as this episode gets to anything approaching satire, which was a pretty important part of the first two movies. But these ads are for mundane products, so the only point they're trying to make is how obtrusive all of the ads are. It's like open mic night at a stand-up club. What's the deal with all of these ads? I mean, what is this, some early YouTube show? Brought to you by Stamps.com? And what's the deal with airplane food? After we see these ads, the camera pans deep into the city where everyone is in a bad mood due to holiday stress. Robocop and his partner are stuck in traffic. I guess that makes them traffic cops. Robocop's partner is not Lewis from the movies. That character doesn't even get mentioned. This is his new and improved partner, an Asian single mom named Minor. Remember that name, Minor, because I'm going to come back to that shortly. But while I'm talking about Minor, let me just say that I wish that this show had decided to give Minor at least one interesting personality trait, something quirky or unique about her to remember. You know, something like, say, a personality of any kind. Meanwhile, at a nearby mall, everyone is fighting over the most popular new toy, an elf. Kudos to the show for predicting the popularity of Elf on the Shelf, which wouldn't debut for another 7 years. Until that toy came out, I would not have believed folks would fight over an elf toy, but that was absolutely a thing that happened back in 2005. Or maybe all the TV writers were just old men remembering the Cabbage Patch Kid craze from the 1980s. That's probably more realistic, actually, yeah. But yeah, some rich ladies fighting over toys. This is what you want in your sci-fi action, right, folks? Oh, and who is this guy? Yeah, that's Robocop's boss, Sergeant Reed. You know, from the movies. This guy. I know. He's lost his mustache and gained a mohawk and probably also about 100 pounds, but that is actually supposed to be the same character. Just go with it. Sergeant Reed is with two of his men trying to keep the peace and protect the mall. People are not only fighting over the toys, they're also realizing that they're being pickpocketed, and that just escalates the violence. The show also gives us a harried store manager who acts very theatrically, we'll say. He's rocking that pencil mustache, and his sole concern is protecting his store. I think we're actually supposed to sympathize with him and his desire to protect the store. There's certainly no innocent customers for Robocop and the police to protect. The police are basically protecting a corporate interest, so maybe the show takes place after the bad guys won in the movies. It's pretty much the opposite of what the movies were all about, which is how serving the public trust was more important than what the rules or the people in charge had to say.
We're police officers, and police officers don't strike.
A larger lady knocks down all of the cops and the store manager, and as the four men cower in fear, Robocop shows up, and everyone just sort of gives up and goes home. Cut to the police department. Well, to be fair, I'm not 100% sure these are the police. They have some sort of authority, but maybe they're supposed to be military or government agents. They all wear high-tech armor. But Robocop is still called Robocop, not Robo-FBI, so I'm going to pretend they're all hanging out at the local precinct. Robocop now has some sort of X-ray vision and looks at Sergeant Reed, determining that he has no broken bones, just bruises. Then Robocop literally prints out a bill out of his chest and bills his superior officer for his medical diagnosis. This is pretty much the biggest joke of the episode, and it shows that the show isn't attempting to be witty. It exchanges any attempts at satire for a very silly atmosphere. This is pretty much the biggest joke of the episode, and it shows that the show has exchanged satire for a very, very silly atmosphere. Honestly, I wouldn't be that surprised if there were slide whistles and fart sounds. In fact, I'm kind of disappointed that there's not. Slide whistles and fart sounds? That's Christmas in my book. Sergeant Reed explains that there's a lot of people that have been pickpocketed, but he has too many of his men keeping the peace, so he can't afford to investigate the crime. He determines that the best course of action is to send in Miner and Robocop to the mall undercover. Undercover! Robocop, the human tank, can best be used as an undercover agent at the mall? Well, the show obviously isn't even pretending to respect our intelligence, so in turn, we don't have to pretend to respect the show. Miner walks around the mall shouting that she's bought tons of gifts because she's rich and wonders what she should do with all of her money. It's very broad. And then someone snags one of her credit cards. It's always nice when a plan works instantly and you don't have to put in any real effort. Yeah, that doesn't really work for me. If you could hit the like button, please hit the like button. Robocop's disguise was a snowman, just standing still. A snowman built like a linebacker, but a snowman. Robocop sheds his brilliant disguise and approaches the person who stole the credit card. He's tracking it in a bag. But when Robocop grabs the person, he's stunned because she's old. Well, he calls her a grandma anyway.
Hand it over, you grandmother.
Robocop isn't so robo-sensitive, is he? Yeah, he's just utterly stunned that an old person could be a thief. That must go against his 7th directive or some crap. But here's the twist. It was not the old lady who stole the card. It was one of those toy elves. It pops out of her bag and taunts Robocop. The elf is the thief. Everything had been set up and now it gets paid off. I apologize. This script is flawless. This is the Chinatown of 90s crappy cartoons. I can't believe that I was so bold as to criticize it. Just utterly brilliant writing. We really shouldn't be talking about it anymore, but what the heck. I think I'm going to keep going. Robocop chases after the elf and corners it in an alley, but there's actually a small army of elves there with construction tools, and they attack Robocop's feet. So he then smashes them to pieces. Don't worry, turns out they're all robots. Oh, but wait. We're supposed to sympathize with Robocop. As Robocop smashes the elves, a bunch of kids witness the scene and they start to cry. I have to admit, that was actually pretty funny. Robocop and Miner head back to their headquarters, and some scientist named Newmeyer hangs out with them while they review mall security footage. But wait, Newmeyer? And remember I said to remember the name Miner? Newmeyer and Miner, those names should sound familiar. The writers of the original movie Robocop were Ed Newmeyer and Michael Miner. Yes, this cartoon decided to honor them by creating new supporting cast members named after the original writers. That's kind of like finding out that you have a sandwich named after you, but it's sold at Arby's. It's bittersweet. Robocop, Miner, and Newmeyer realize that the mall has security footage with a missing bit of timecode. Whoever is pickpocketing people is using high-tech toys to complete the crimes and then also cover them up. Before the team can do anything with this new information, Sergeant Reed calls them right back to the mall. As they leave, they pass a massive gift by the front door. Newmeyer gets excited and says no one ever gives him anything, and that maybe it's a massive fruitcake. This guy found a way to announce something depressing, that he never gets any presents, and then adds another layer to that depression by wishing it was a fruitcake. And then I guess we could actually add another layer on top of that, another depressing layer, when we realize that he thought a package the size of a refrigerator could even be a fruitcake. This is just a Christmas layered cake of depression. That sounds delicious. Newmeyer opens the present and a woman in a Santa outfit pops out. Newmeyer is terrified of her and literally passes out as the show cuts to a commercial. which is just so greedy to try to hook you and then try to sell you stuff right in the middle. It took me a while to figure out why Neumeier is so scared of this woman, and at first, I thought I wasn't paying close enough attention and missed something, but no. This character is named the unlikely name of Charlotta Tannenbaum, and apparently she appeared in a previous episode as a criminal that tried to kill everyone. That all gets explained after the commercial break, but I want to pause and just say something about the commercial break that I really liked. There are these little animated bumpers where Robocop is like, we'll be back after these messages. And in this episode, as the show returns from commercial break, it shows a clip of Robocop firing a missile that blows up a car that a punk is driving in. And then the show just starts. For a show that works so hard to avoid any kind of serious violence, I was very amused at how the car explodes without showing the punk escaping from it. It's the little things that you have to appreciate. Back to the show. Charlotta gets out of the package and tells Neumeier that she got out of jail for good behavior. And he just accepts that because all of the characters on this show seem to be extremely dumb. When Robocop and Miner get back to the mall, the store manager is crying that the cash registers will no longer accept credit cards, so the store is going mad. Miner asks what the manager can tell them about the elf dolls, which ends up being a lot. For instance, he bought them from the same company that installed his security system, and they sold the elf dolls really cheap, so he got excited about a healthy profit margin. At this point, I kind of feel like that guy deserves whatever problems he gets because he really has invited them in. But Robocop still wants to defend him. Robo notices a deer statue is staring at them. Robocop now goes full Inspector Gadget and shoots a grappling hook at the reindeer. Then he tells the reindeer that it is not allowed to touch his own self-destruct collar. How did Robocop even know that the deer had a self-destruct collar? Now that I think of it, maybe he didn't. This version of Robocop doesn't look especially cool. He's doing things like popping out roller skates and stuff like that out of his body, so maybe he sort of made up a little fib to show that he's still got that riz. Robocop uses his data reader stiletto blade thing to plug into the reindeer, and he figures out who is controlling it. Can you guess who? There's not many characters in this episode, so it's really not the biggest mystery, is it? Charlotta is aggressively hitting on Neumeier and asks him to get her some cocoa. While he's distracted, she checks on some sort of video voicemail from Robocop that explains how they will be able to track the signal back to the source. Charlotta gets mad, and I'm sure you're all shocked to learn that the escaped criminal is the secret mastermind behind the pickpocketing toys. Go ahead and take a moment to catch your breath. I'm sure your gasp was at least as big as mine. Charlotta then drugs Neumeier's drink and knocks him out. She literally roofies this guy. She's a bad person. Remember that for later. Robocop and Miner walk into an empty warehouse, and Charlotta is just standing around on a catwalk waiting for them with Neumeier tied up. Her clever line,
Well, a couple of holiday turkeys ready to get stuffed.
I mean, she had a lot of time, and that was the best she could come up with. I'd have settled for something simple like season's beatings. Charlotta then sends her elves to surround Robocop and Miner, and even though Robocop easily smashed up a little army of them earlier, this time Robocop and Miner just sort of stand around. Maybe it's because this pickpocketing villain is really not a threat that's in the same league as guys like Dick Jones, Clarence Boddicker, or even a malfunctioning Ed 209. Miner tells Charlotta that this is where she's allowed to explain her evil plan since she has them captured. It's a stalling technique, and an obvious one at that, but Charlotta actually does it. She explains that she wants to ruin Christmas for everyone by pushing people over the edge during the holidays. Robocop says he understands why she'd want revenge on them, but why would she want to ruin Christmas for normal citizens? Well, she explains that people tease her for having the last name Tannenbaum, so now she hates Christmas. Find me a person in school who did not get teased for their name. Can you imagine a world where people wanted revenge on the thing that bullies used to rhyme with their name instead of wanting revenge on the bullies themselves? For instance, I guess I would be going after piss, because I'm Chris. Tell me in the comments below what you would be getting revenge on. Charlotta then has her Christmas-themed robots attack Miner and Robocop. None of them are effective at all. Robocop even busts out a flamethrower to melt a snowman that looks very sad to be destroyed. Miner just sort of shoots a lot of elves. Charlotta displays a surprising amount of strength by lifting Newmeyer and running away with him as her hostage. I really can't figure out what the overall message of all of this is supposed to be. Everyone is just breaking toy robots. Charlotta threatens to drop Newmeyer off the roof when Robocop and Miner catch up to her. But then Newmeyer explains that she shouldn't kill him because he loves her. And he's being completely serious. This woman has stolen, threatened lives, and even drugged him, but she also pretended to hit on him and he likes her for that. Touched by this, she reveals that she really likes him too. This is a terrible message, just really, really bad. There are kids, theoretically, watching this show. Are they supposed to think that this is how a real adult relationship could work? Just offensively bad. Charlotta then takes Newmeyer and jumps into a flying robot Santa that she summons. Robocop and Miner follow after her on one of those advertising blimps from earlier. And this is the epic action scene to close out the episode. A trash can robot flying after Santa's sleigh. Oh, and also, Charlotta apparently has a bomb. Who cares? Because Robocop crashes into her, and they all crash into the mall, destroying it. No one was injured, but so much for protecting the mall, I guess. The manager weeps openly. No one else cares. The episode ends with Charlotta and Newmeyer making out while Robocop carries them away. That's a good use for the robot. Robocop says Charlotta is going back to jail, and Newmeyer says that he will wait for her. This episode broke me, folks. It's just so bad. It features a hero protecting a mall, and then he destroys it at the end. It features a bunch of rude customers that never really learn the true meaning of the season or get punished for their bad behavior. And it features a villain who robs, who threatens lives, who drugs someone, and she gets rewarded for her crimes with love. It's bad on so many levels. The worst Christmas-themed thing I think I've ever seen. I'm pretty sure it has to be. Yeah, it just has to be. It's so bad. But you know what? Our holidays have to be better than this. So, thank you so much for watching. Merry Christmas. Keep reading comics. The episode... It's so stupid. Whew. Oh, folks, what a ridiculous episode, but thank you so much for watching. You know, it's actually a pretty good time to be a fan of Robocop, I gotta say, because while it's not like there's a new movie or anything, we did get in 2023, right at the end, we got both a cool documentary about Robocop, RoboDoc. That's really great. It has a hilarious story about actor Peter Weller demanding Oreo cookies while in his Robocop suit. And there's also the new Robocop video game. I wouldn't call it fantastic, but it's solid. It's fun, and it's got Peter Weller back in the role. It looks good. It plays decent. I'm just saying, it's not a bad time to be a Robocop fan. Robocop 2 and 3 are not great movies. And I love Frank Miller of that era, but, you know, Hollywood did not treat him kindly. The comic book adaptations of his material, I wouldn't argue, are that much better. But if you do want a good Robocop comic, I will recommend Robocop vs. Terminator. That one is pretty fun, and it's got great Walt Simonson art. That's probably the one I'd recommend. By the way, folks, I'm excited. 2024, I've got tons of ideas for this channel and some of you may not know, but I've got a second channel called Pros and Cons where I do a weekly live stream recapping the comic books and comic book news of the week. And I'm going to start a new second show on that. It'll only be monthly, but comic book creator Jim Mahfood and I are going to be making a new show on that channel. So I'm really excited. Hopefully you'll consider checking out that second channel as well. But I will be back here next week with an episode that ties in to one of the big budget movies that's just about to come out and is based on comic books. I think you're going to like it. Thank you so much. I'll see you real soon.